that. I want to talk to you for a second about 2016. I think we can agree that, at least this is my opinion, that the FBI is the premier law enforcement agency in all of human history. And I think most Americans and most of our friends across the world believe that as well. Unfortunately, there's been created a perception that given the two investigations of presidential candidates in 2016, that some members of the FBI allegedly acted on their political beliefs. And I think it's important that we get rid of that perception. We've forgotten also that there were two investigations. There was an investigation of President Trump, but also an investigation of Secretary Clinton. I know the Inspector General has weighed in on the Clinton investigation, and he is weighing in on the Trump investigation. But aside from that, can you tell me what the factual predicate was for the investigation of Secretary Clinton and her alleged email scandal?
I don't know that I can say sitting here today what the predicate is. As you mentioned, the independent Inspector General did a fairly intense and rigorous and thorough investigation of that investigation and provided a pretty long report and testified in front of multiple committees of Congress about it. There were a lot of important lessons learned from that, and I think we, the FBI, and I at the helm, took those lessons very much to heart immediately. Some of them we already had in place.
Interrupted, Mr. Director, but I'm going to run out of time, and I don't want to do that. Can you tell me what the factual predicate was for the investigation of President Trump?
Well, the special counsel's report goes through a fair amount of detail about the predication for its investigation. I think beyond that, as I mentioned to the chairman, I've had a number of conversations and I'm working to help the Attorney General get to the bottom of an understanding of what the circumstances surrounding the initiation of that investigation were at the Department and the FBI back in 2016.
Why don't you just, I know you can't do this on your own, but the President can. The President could declassify with proper redaction all of the documents at the FBI pertaining to the 2016 investigation of Secretary Clinton and President Trump, and then let the American people see them and draw their own conclusions. Why don't we do that?
Well, without weighing in on the legal question of authority, certainly, I would tell you that when we redact information or when we classify information, there are a number of very, very important principles that are at stake there. Protection of sources and methods, without which Americans are less safe. Protection of ongoing criminal investigations or other investigations, without which the American people are less safe. And there are various other legal issues implicated that go beyond just the power to declassify. And so while I think it's important that we be as transparent as we can be with the American people and certainly with the Congress, I also think it's very important to protect those kinds of information that are the lifeblood of our ability to fulfill our mission.
What are we going to do then, Mr. Director? How do we remove this perception that there were a handful of people at the FBI and at the Justice Department in 2016 that acted on their political beliefs and tried to influence the election? How we're going to lance that boil? And I'm talking about both with respect to the investigations of Mrs. Clinton and Mr. Trump.
So as to both matters, one case already completed, the other case still underway, there have been independent, so outside the FBI, Inspector General investigations that are professional, that are apolitical, that are rigorous, that are sometimes quite painful for the agency in question. And we've taken a number of steps to learn those lessons from the Clinton email investigation. There have been personnel moves, training improvements, policy improvements, all sorts of things that I laid out in great depth last summer in response to that investigation. And I would expect that we will take to heart in a very similar way whatever lessons are conveyed through the other Inspector General investigation, which is pending. But as to the perception, I think it is important for the American people to understand, and you alluded to it in your very helpful comments at the beginning, that we're talking about two investigations over about a 15-month period, as opposed to the thousands and thousands of investigations that the FBI does to keep Americans safe that are conducted by 37,000 men and women that, in my experience, are brave, professional, rigorous, thoughtful, and I think deserve better than some of the commentary that has been out there. And so I appreciate your comments about the efforts in New Orleans, where there have been some really remarkable efforts made, and I think it would be helpful for everyone to take a deep breath and remember that we've had more than 2 investigations over the last 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Coons.